This next one seems a bit technical, but I'm going to see what we can do with this one. We're talking to Steve. Steve is calling in from New York. Steve, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me. And Jesus, I'm honored and humbled that you're gracing us with your presence here with us today. That's awesome.
Thank you. Hallelujah.
Yeah, amen.
All right.
So what do you got for us, Steve?
Okay, so, I wanted to kind of point out what I guess you could call kind of an interesting phenomena about our intellectual culture. So I wanted to try to kind of briefly sketch out the radical translation paradigm by the philosopher Quine. And this was like in the 1950s or so. I think he's like a behaviorist. But basically, kind of the idea is that when you're sort of explaining something like vision or, the sound side of language, you're far enough away from, the traditionally what was the traditional soul that you can allow science to enter. But when you get to like language, then you're right at the core of things, and you have to make sure the barriers are very high and nothing rational can get through, even though, so Quine isn't religious or anything. But when he explains this kind of stuff, it sort of spells itself out similar to the traditional church. So,
okay.
I mean, the theory is like a priori, it's like completely false and easily refutable. Basically, like a child acquiring a language or a linguist, trying to learn what kind of a language some jungle community is speaking. They're granted all of phonology, so they get like the noises broken down into like sounds of language and all of morphology. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay.
They're granted like sentences broken down into words. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. I pulled up a Wikipedia article and I'm reading as you're talking. And I will say this much: I'm not as familiar with this side of language of philosophy. I like philosophy. I've talked philosophy on here. This part is not familiar to me. So if we're going to talk about a brand new concept for me, I don't know if I can give an opinion on it, to be honest. I think I'd have to really think about it. I don't know what was going on with the soul thing. I don't know how that guy says we have access to the soul.
So the basic, the idea is that, you see a rabbit and you hear the word gavagai, and you're basically allowed to do one thing: ask whether that thing is or is not, a gavagai or a rabbit or whatever. But when I say rabbit, I'm cheating because all you see is a visual presentation. So anything that's consistent with that visual stimulus could be what's being referred to. Like, it could be the tail of the rabbit or the rabbit against the bush or, a age and growth of rabbits. So from this, Quine concludes that there's no truth. It's called indeterminacy. So there's no truth to the question of, is that thing a rabbit? So the rabbit, I'm cheating because, again, that's the concept side, and there's really no, theory in terms of concepts. A lot is known about, articulatory, perceptual, sensory stuff. But in terms of concepts, we have evidence about, what is in fact known, like that when acquiring language, when a child hears the word rabbit or whatever, they immediately know what is meant, and there's no further correction needed. In fact, we all made the same move. That's why we're able to understand the example. it's not like there's half of communities out there, that think I'm talking about a stage of a rabbit's development. I mean, I guess you can make up a technical word for that, but
I get what you're saying, Steve. I get it now. I get it. This is really okay. So you go back to Wittgenstein, right? Doing what the 20th century did to language was absolutely crazy. Basically blew everything out of the water. Said that we can't really know anything without defining our terms, and what does it even mean to define our terms? How do we do this? And from that onward, in the 20th century, and traditions of postmodernism, you have this real deep explorations of what does it mean to even describe things? What is language? How do we know words and things? And it gets way into the trenches, really, really deep. And I'll be honest with you, I have no answers. I have no answers I can give to you, Steve. I am very postmodern in my thinking of a lot of things. In fact, I don't know. Even when it comes to topics like morality, I'm pretty postmodern on it. I don't know, my meta ethics are, maybe there are no, I don't know if we can say that there's an objective right or wrong, things like that. I go to that territory. So same thing with language and defining things or whatever. I don't have good answers for you, to be honest. Language comes down to me just social categories that we as apes just kind of invented to describe things, and I kind of leave it at that. I don't have anything much deeper to say than what other people have spent their careers writing about.
To be honest, I'm taking this mostly from a lecture series. Noam Chomsky speaks on cognitive revolution, parts 1 through 9, and it's a really interesting lecture series that I'd recommend. But it's funny. He says that the only post X he understands is post Newtonian, and he just doesn't. His eyes glaze over when he hears postmodernism stuff.
Yeah,
but
we haven't talked. Oh, go ahead, Steve, real quick, and then I'm going to cut you off. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I just wanted to, just point out. So it's kind of funny. He leaves it as to try to work out a different explanation than as the concept rabbit. The GABA guy is sort of the sound side, so you can kind of study that and that analyze that in terms of science. But rabbit is closer to the soul, so you kind of have to veer off into irrationality. But leaves it as an example to try to find out another explanation of why everybody's happy, where there's where they say there's where everybody's saying there's no underdetermination, where there really is underdetermination, the phonology, because basically they already are presupposing that the child.
I gotta cut you off.
Linguist.
I gotta cut you off.
Got to the point of GABA guy. Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I totally get you. There's problems in our understanding and the foundations of language. Linguists like Noam Chomsky and other people have really tried to look into that, and it's a fascinating thing to figure out. The problem I have with the construction of really a little postmodern language studies in general is I really think a lot of these are going to be questions that we will figure out through the lenses of biology first, before we figure out through philosophy, if that makes sense. And that maybe that's a hot take. I don't know, but it seems to me, until we really understand how the brain actually works more and how we understand language, because quite frankly, we don't know enough to really make these abstract determinations on, subject versus object versus all this other stuff. Then I have to leave it to those people who are really big experts in the field. I will say, I do have my own thoughts about, the phenomenology of language and, how we can rationally, epistemically come to determinations on what's real and what's not, and how we communicate that. But that's neither here nor there. For the purposes of this show, which is an entertaining call-in show that happens live on Friday nights. I got to leave it at that and say that's it for me, man. As long as you're not saying, Steve, oh, well, we know all this because of the Bible. I think we're good. I think I can probably agree with you and disagree with you on certain points, and we can go from there. But, I'll leave that to the pros. I'll leave that to the PhDs, not the YouTube commenters or YouTube podcast hosts, whatever I am, but thank you, Steve. I do appreciate you bringing it up because it is weird. People do make weird assumptions about language and how that works. It does come up in Christian apologist circles, but also just, I don't know, studies of the mind, how we come to know things. Anyway, Jesus, you've been notably silent through this. I know you've been thinking with that beautiful locks of hair and the things in between the hair, rather the head.
Oh, why? Thank you.
So yeah,
I was just thinking about the sounds that we make with our mouths, to communicate, and how some people make nice sounds and other people's sounds doesn't sound as nice.
Yeah.
Some
true.
people like Fran Drescher,
Fran, wait, you don't like Fran? You don't like the nanny?
Oh, I love her. I just don't like her sound.
Oh,
it's
required.
She's a great person, wonderful person.
Yeah, okay.
We're Hebrews, but she, I'm just talking about the actual tonal noise, like what comes out of the mouth hole. It's funny. It's kind of weird that the language
is weird.
You don't think about it every day.
Language is weird, and I've talked about this on the show before, but I will say it again. Everything about Koko is a lie. A lot of that research on ape language is totally bogus, and there's a lot of people that have talked about it. Go check that stuff out, because everything you learned about elementary school about Koko the gorilla is probably not true. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that bomb there and walk away. So the more you know, the more you know.
Christmas.
Yeah, I ruined somebody's Christmas. That's for sure.
So Koko the gorilla, the whole that you're saying that's not. What's the basic rundown of that?
The basic rundown is there's a lot of research that has supposedly happened that has never actually been published and peer reviewed, and the interpretations given by Koko are often nebulous and not actually how an actual signing person would interpret the signs. It's more that the researchers kind of said, this is what they meant to say. They said this, but what they really meant this. When if I said, apple versus brapple, if you said brapple, he's like, oh, well, he really meant to say apple. Yeah, that makes sense on a verbal level, but signing doesn't work like that. Right. So you have to have two different signs for different words. So anyway, it's a whole thing. It's crazy. But that's the hot take on Koko. I got to bring that up at least once a year because you got to know the truth. Yeah. Hashtag expose Koko. Just kidding. Koko didn't do anything wrong. It was the people.